Wide.
Good evening. I'm Judy Woodruff in New York.
And I'm Jim Lehrer in Washington. After our summary of the news this Tuesday, David Gergen and Mark Shields analyzed Clinton and Bush primary victories in Michigan and Illinois, as well as the latest in the House check bouncing scandal. And Charlene Hunter-Gault profiles the new republics of Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour is provided by AT&T and by PepsiCo. And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
This was a good day for Bill Clinton and President Bush in Illinois and Michigan. With the polls now closed, the television networks have projected Clinton and Bush victories in both states' presidential primaries. On the Democratic side in Illinois, the latest results show Clinton 43%, Tsongas 32%, Brown 17%. That's only with 2% of the vote counted. In Michigan, Clinton 43% to Brown's 30%, Tsongas is 20%. That's with 18% of the vote counted. In the Republican races in Michigan, Bush 66% to 26% for Pat Buchanan with 18% of the vote counted. And in Illinois, Bush 78%, Buchanan 21%. That's with only 2% of the vote. We'll talk with Gergen and Shields about it all later in the program. The check bouncing scandal in the House of Representatives spread to the Bush cabinet today. 3 cabinet members admitted they wrote overdraft checks at the now defunct House Bank when they served on Capitol Hill. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney said he had at least 21 problem checks, Agriculture Secretary Edward Madigan 49, Labor Secretary Lynn Martin 16. Last week, the House voted to disclose the names of all current and former members who overdrew their accounts during a 39-month period ending last October. Cheney called a news conference at the Pentagon this afternoon.
It's been my goal to conduct my personal life in such a way as to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. So it is with considerable anger and frustration that I find myself here today, having to account for the use of the Sergeant-at-Arms Bank while I was a member of Congress. It is especially aggravating to be lumped together with others who were clearly abusing the system, taking advantage of their knowledge that the bank would never bounce a check in order to obtain no-interest loans or significant advances against their paychecks. I would hope that anyone looking at this will look closely enough at the facts to be able to make distinctions between those of us who did not know the system could be abused and those who clearly were abusing the system.
President Bush said today he does not think he bounced any checks when he served in the House of Representatives from 1967 to 71, but he was double-checking his records. A spokesman for the vice president said Mr. Quayle did not believe he wrote any overdrafts either during his years in the House from 1977 to 81. He said they were not looking any further into the matter at this time. We'll have more on the check story later in the program. Judy?
The telephone records of the 2 reporters who broke the story of Anita Hill's charges against Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas have been subpoenaed by a special Senate counsel. Independent counsel Peter Fleming wants records for the 2-week period before the sexual harassment charges were disclosed. They include calls from both the offices and the homes of the reporters, who are Timothy Phelps of Newsday and Nina Totenberg of National Public Radio. Both have refused to say how they learned of the charges against Thomas. Their attorneys say they will try to block the special prosecutor's action. And today, Newsday's publisher called the subpoenas a, quote, gross, dangerous, and destructive invasion of the reporting process.
On the economy, consumer prices went up in February 0.3%. The Labor Department reported today higher clothing and food costs were the main cause. Construction of new homes and apartments also rose in February to its highest level in nearly 2 years. And industrial production rebounded after a 3-month slide. The advance in output at the nation's factories, mines, and utilities was the strongest since July.
There was a big turnout in South Africa today for the crucial whites-only referendum on ending apartheid. President F.W. de Klerk predicted he would get the victory he needed to continue his move towards sharing power with blacks. Jeremy Thompson of Independent Television News reports from Johannesburg.
White South Africans queued as never before to cast a vote that will decide their destiny. In a country where polling has traditionally been marked by apathy and abstention, today's turnout was unprecedented. The early signs suggested an 80% ballot in some areas, a show that should favor Mr. de Klerk, the man who staked his political career on the outcome. Only a sizable yes vote majority will give the president the authority he needs to continue his drive towards non-racial democracy. His arch-rival, Dr. Trunick, whose right-wing campaign had gathered considerable support from whites who want to return to apartheid, still looked confident as he cast his no vote. Most of his support will come from the rural heartland of the Afrikaners. But the huge turnout in cities like Johannesburg is expected to tip the balance towards Mr. de Klerk, with thousands of newly registered voters polling yes.
Voting hours were extended in many polling places because of the heavy turnout. Official results are not expected until tomorrow.
Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Aarons talked today to Secretary of State Baker about the $10 billion loan guarantee problem. Aarons refused to take reporters' questions on the matter after the Washington meeting, but on Israeli radio he said, "I don't think there is any issue of giving up on our part. We have presented our request, and as it appears now, the request will not be honored." The United States wanted Israel to stop new settlement activity in the occupied territories in exchange for the loan guarantees, something Israel refused to do. Congressional leaders also met with President Bush on the issue today. Senator Patrick Leahy, Democrat of Vermont, said the president rejected their proposed compromise. At least 10 people were killed today and 105 injured when a bomb ripped through the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, Argentina. The mid-afternoon blast reduced the 4-story building to rubble. The dead included 3 children and 2 policemen. Argentine President Carlos Menem blamed the attack on international terrorists.
United Nations envoy Cyrus Vance arrived in the former Soviet Republic of Azerbaijan today. He said he was there on a fact-finding mission and not to mediate the republic's dispute with Armenia over the enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh. Ethnic Armenians who live there have fought a bitter 4-year battle against Azerbaijan for control of the territory. More than 1,000 people have died in the fighting. Meanwhile, a manned Soyuz rocket blasted off from a former Soviet space center in Kazakhstan today. It was carrying a German and 2 Russian cosmonauts to the Mir space station. They will replace a cosmonaut who has been in the station for 10 months. He was supposed to return in October, but was stranded because of the political upheaval in the Soviet Union.
And that's it for the news summary tonight. Now it's on to Gergen and Shields on the primary results, the newest bounces in the House banking scandal, and the story of Azerbaijan and Armenia. Now some analysis of today's Illinois and Michigan presidential primaries, which produced victories for Bill Clinton and President Bush. It comes from Gergen and Shields. David Gergen, editor-at-large of U.S. News and World Report, and syndicated columnist Mark Shields, who joins us tonight from Henderson, Nevada. David, Clinton won both Michigan and Illinois rather handily. He did much better in Illinois than he did in Michigan, but nevertheless, is he the nominee of the Democratic Party? Almost?
Almost, for all intents and purposes. That crown is just hovering right over his head tonight, Jim. These are dramatic victories in states that Paul Tsongas had said originally were neutral territory. First time they'd gone head-to-head in neutral territory, and Clinton whomped him. And you have to say right now that these are, I think these are the springboard to a nomination, unless there's some further revelation that would blow him out of the water. But the other thing that's happening, I find, around the country is a number of people are telling me they're beginning to admire the way he takes the blows as they come at him. He took another one this week, and even so, Jerry Brown went after him in a debate, fierce debate, and Clinton goes back after him and wins this big victory. So these are big victories for Bill Clinton tonight.
The Jerry Brown factor, Mark. Brown, according to the results in thus far, is getting roughly 30% of the vote compared to 43% for Clinton, 20% for Paul Tsongas. So going after Clinton is paying off for Brown? Is that how you would interpret that?
Well, I think it's one interpretation, Jim. First of all, Jerry Brown has put together a coalition, an interesting coalition, based upon the outsider. His candidacy was certainly not hurt by the revelations out of Washington, most recently on the House bank. Every time there's bad news out of Washington of corruption, corrosion, or compromise, Jerry Brown, as the anti-Washington outsider candidate, is probably the most direct beneficiary. But he was able to really make it a two-way fight, in large part in the closing days of both campaigns, by taking on Bill Clinton personally. I think it was an attack that probably helped both candidates. That Clinton did look strong in standing up for his wife, who was the original target of criticisms, or at least one target of the criticism, and it helped Brown by making him the Clinton alternative and making it a mano between the two.
Mark, what's your reading of what's happened to Paul Tsongas?
I think what happened to Paul Tsongas, quite frankly, and David's right, he did say that this was neutral territory for the first time, is that he was unable in Michigan to establish any apparent relationship, emotional connect point with blue-collar workers of the kind who vote in a Democratic primary in that great industrial state. And it's interesting because Paul Tsongas had a fascinating story to tell. Paul Tsongas, as a senator, had played a key instrumental role in securing the guaranteed loan bailout for Chrysler and probably saved well over 100,000 jobs at Chrysler alone in Michigan. And that was a story that was never communicated in a way that seemed relevant to primary voters today.
What's your analysis, David, of why Tsongas hasn't been able to do any better, particularly in Michigan and Illinois?
Well, Jim, I think that Paul Tsongas wasn't ready after New Hampshire to move to a national campaign, and he went and did well in Maryland, but then the campaign moved south, and you know, his campaign got lost somewhere down on Route 1 in Florida. I mean, we haven't seen him since. I mean, he hasn't been the same kind of candidate. He's been off balance. He hasn't had much to say. He's been, you know, once Clinton went after him and he took the bait and started having a fight with Bill Clinton over various issues, he lost his message, and he hasn't reconnected since.
He said he had to do that, though. He said he had to prove that he could counterpunch. He could take it and then he could give it back, unlike Michael Dukakis.
Well, unlike Michael Dukakis, and you know, he has been, the ghost of Michael Dukakis has hovered over him in this campaign, and it's been trouble for him. But the fact was, because he couldn't get back to his message, and then as Mark points out, somehow the chemistry doesn't work between Paul Tsongas and the blue-collar voters. I think, you know, from my point of view, I wish Paul Tsongas were going to stay in this race because I think his message was an important one to hear. It was an alternative to what Bill Clinton and to what George Bush are presenting. It was a different way to look at the economy. And now I think he's getting squeezed out. I think Mark is right. It's coming down to a two-man race now, not between Tsongas and Clinton, but between Clinton and Brown.
On the Republican side, Mark, Pat Buchanan has now been soundly defeated in 15 straight primaries. What does he do now?
I think he licks his wounds, reconsiders, goes back to whatever drawing board he came up with the campaign originally, and figures out what he can salvage at this point. And he's talking bravely about going on to California, but it gets tougher and tougher because even that one-third protest vote that he had been collecting in states where he campaigned hard and in states where he didn't has left him.
Yeah. He has called, David, he's called a news conference for tomorrow. His sister was quoted tonight as at least conceding that her brother was not going to win the Republican nomination.
Not this year.
Not this year. What do you think he's going to do and should do?
Well, it sounds like he's going to, because he's holding his press conference tomorrow, it sounds like he's going to scale back his campaign. He's going to pick 2 or 3 spots. He's going to move now to a much different kind of campaign mode, and that is he'll be more positive. He won't be going after the president. I assume he'll start going after Clinton more than he has in the past. And I think he will try to build a base of support for himself for the future and try to define conservatism. I do think he wants to stay in as long as he can to have as much leverage as he can upon George Bush. It's clear that that's worked, that it has moved Bush right.
How do you read the fact that he didn't seem to wear well? In other words, he did his best at the very beginning where people didn't know much about him, and the more they got to know about him, the worse he's done in each succeeding primary.
I'm not sure I know the answer, but I do think that when he went south, he lost his message. Mm-hmm. And he began playing on racial fears and divisions, and I think that people took a different... I think he went too negative in the South. That advertisement that we showed on the air one night, you know, remember you showed that of the gay thing, it's the film, and when he went after the NEA, when he got into those issues, and particularly on the racial side, I think people sort of had a reaction and sort of said, I don't like this fellow as much as I thought he did. If he'd stuck to his message, my sense of it is that every candidate in this race has gone off his message. Bill Clinton the least, but all of them, Bush, Buchanan, and Tsongas, have all lost their message. I think they're less effective candidates today than they were 2 or 3 months ago.
How do you analyze Buchanan's problem there on the message, Mark?
Well, I think David is right. I think that Pat Buchanan was a surprisingly strong challenger in New Hampshire, in large part because he was able to communicate sort of a conservative populist rage and anger at the economic pain that was inflicted upon that state and its people. And as he headed south, he started going to other issues. He did move the president right, make no mistake about it. George Bush became a more ardent and importunate suitor of the conservative movement as a result of Pat Buchanan's candidacy. But I think that I don't think the National Endowment for the Arts was a bad issue. I think the execution was. I think the execution, David, the commercial that David cited, was offensive to people. I think the issue itself is certainly not an issue that Pat Buchanan shouldn't be comfortable with, because it's one that he's on the popular side, quite frankly, as evidenced by the president's quick give of the exit and out the gate for the chairman of that agency.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, gentlemen, let's go on to the other big political story of this day, the new bounce in the check bouncing scandal. Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney, Labor Secretary Lynn Martin, and Agriculture Secretary Edward Madigan all admitted they bounced checks while serving in the House of Representatives. Meanwhile, many current members of Congress have been trying to explain to the people back home what happened. We have 2 reports before we talk, Mark and David. The first here is from Elizabeth Brackett in Chicago.
Charles A. Hayes.
Congressman Charlie Hayes walked into his Chicago polling place this morning knowing he was in danger of losing the seat he has held for the past 9.5 years. Hayes' name was listed as one of the 24 worst abusers of congressional check-writing privileges. According to the Associated Press, Hayes wrote checks that overdrew his account 716 times. Hayes called a weekend news conference to try and explain his problem to the voters.
I overdrew my account in small amounts. I covered any overdrafts. And I owe no money to anyone.
The 74-year-old congressman was even more forceful at an election eve rally in a neighborhood church.
I'm not a criminal. I have made no money off of the overdraft. I owe the government or nobody else nothing as a result of it. And I want you to understand it. And I'm telling you firsthand, they're keeping it alive as long as they can and hoping they'll confuse you and get you to vote against me for an opponent who they control. Keep that in mind.
The congressman says he still does not have a copy from the House Ethics Committee on how much he was overdrawn. And he says he is angry that information on his account was leaked to the press before it was given to him. Besides, he says, it is not an issue that voters care much about. And that was the case with some voters we talked to today.
Doesn't bother me that much.
Why not?
Because I'm one of these people that chances are I may wind up bouncing 1 or 2 checks a month. I may have gone over on my account. Although I realize the big hue and cry is that, well, if we run over, then we have to pay a penalty and so forth and so on. Therefore, it's no big deal to me. I'll just go down and pay the penalty. Maybe next month or 2 I may even run over again. So I can understand an awful lot of people feel that, well, if it happens to me, that then they should be able to pay. If they had a situation where it didn't cost them anything, so what? Not a big deal.
But for other voters today, the congressman's overdrafts were a very big deal.
We have to pay fees. We get penalized when we write bounce checks. I can't go to my bank and write a bounce check. They'll bounce me out the door. But how can they do it? They're supposed to be there to set an example. And instead, they're worse than us. You know, they're not setting any kind of an example. You know, and when all this money coming from? Who's got to pay for all this stuff that he goes and writes all these checks for? We do. We don't. They're always screaming that the economy is bad, but then their own government are writing bounce checks.
Congressman Hayes is facing his toughest campaign since he was first elected to fill the late Mayor Harold Washington's congressional seat in 1983. And his main opponent says the overdraft scandal could make the difference in this hotly contested race.
Bobby Rush, front 17. How you doing? Bobby Rush, front 17, okay.
Chicago Alderman Bobby Rush is the congressman's toughest opponent in the Democratic primary. Rush, one-time leader of the Black Panther Party in Chicago in the 1960s, says Congressman Hayes has not reached voters with an explanation of his actions.
I would have expected him to be out here at 95th and L on the eve before saying, you know, forgive me, or it won't happen again, or try to some explanation. But that's just my opinion. I'm not counting on that one issue to be an issue that is going to defeat Charlie Hayes.
For some voters today, the congressman's overdraft problems was the issue that decided their vote.
I think it's basically been the deciding factor in how I'm going to vote. Neither one have campaigned very much in this neighborhood, and we haven't heard much about either one, but his reaction to the overdraft, I think, has basically made up my mind on the decision.
What did you hear in the reaction that bothered you?
His reaction was basically one of sloughing it off, pretty arrogant, I thought. Not very responsive at all.
Did you not vote for him because of that?
Yeah, I didn't vote for him because that was one of the main reasons. One of the big main reasons when I went to the polls, and I thought, no, we can't let this man get in here. No, he's not looking out for us. He's just looking out for his own welfare. You know, he's trying to enrich his life. Forget about ours, and no, we're not going to listen to that.
Congressman Hayes has won with more than 90% of the vote in his last 3 primary and general elections. But this time, with a new district and a big problem, his incumbency may not mean as much as it has in the past.
This is Kwame Holman in Cleveland. The festive St. Patrick's Day mood was already evident this morning. At the 102-year-old arcade downtown, Clevelanders were gearing up for this afternoon's big annual parade, traditionally an event in which politicians get to go before an enthusiastic public. But this year, their jubilation was overshadowed by a weekend of headlines identifying 3 Cleveland Democrats as having floated checks on their House bank accounts. 2 members, 8-term Representative Mary Rose Okar and 5-termer Ed Thean, also are on the notorious list of 24 current and former House members identified by the Ethics Committee as having repeated and significant overdrafts. In this overwhelmingly Democratic city, voters found the news disturbing.
In the military, when I was in the military, if we wrote bad checks, we'd get in trouble. We could even go to jail for it.
I guess I'm never surprised any longer with those who represent us in Washington or even on the local or state level. Nothing amazes me or startles me too much anymore, but I always tend to still be disappointed.
Rod Barrington, a computer specialist, is represented by Louis Stokes, the chairman of the House Ethics Committee, who last fall acknowledged a handful of overdrafts, then removed himself from the committee investigation.
Well, it appears to me as an abuse of privilege. Members of Congress should be held to a much higher standard than their constituents. They should set an example for everybody else.
Over the weekend, Representative Thean appeared on a local news show and was confronted by his assertion just the day before that he would not be on the worst abuser list.
We won't see your name on the
No,
list 24.
no, definitely. Well, again, tonight, Congressman Thean joins us live in our studio. And, Congressman, after watching that replay from just 24 hours ago, did you speak too soon?
Well, apparently I did, Dave, and I was stunned, actually, when I got a call tonight about this list. While the terms bad checks and bounce checks are being used, in fact, in almost all cases, we're not talking about bounce checks or bad checks. We're talking about checks that were written against an allowable overdraft allowance at the House bank.
For her part, Representative Okar chose contrition about having overdrafted 217 checks worth more than $227,000.
I accept full responsibility. I mean, I accept full responsibility, and you know, I feel very strongly that I made a mistake in handling that. On the other hand, I do think that the manner in which it operated, and probably operated for a number of years, far before I was in Congress, left a lot to be desired as well.
But apologies and explanations may not be enough. A Cleveland television station yesterday asked viewers whether they would vote to re-elect a member of Congress with an overdrafted account. Of more than 20,000 who called in, 74% said they would not re-elect a check bouncer. Such reactions, though unscientific, have local Republicans sensing a rare political opportunity.
I love it.
Roger Seinenberg is co-chair of the local county Republican organization.
People have seen Congresswoman Okar and Congressman Fiam as virtually unbeatable in the past. But just in the last few days alone, we've had a number of recognizable county figures, Republicans, step forward and express an interest in those positions that they didn't have prior to these recent revelations about this Rubbergate.
When the St. Patrick's Day parade got underway this afternoon, the only member of Cleveland's congressional delegation present was Congresswoman Okar.
It's saying hang in there. Pretty much hang in there.
Whether Cleveland's House Democrats can hang in there soon will be up to the voters.
Again to David Gergen and Mark Shields. Mark, first, do the Cheney, Madigan, and Martin admissions get the Democrats off the political hook on this issue?
I think it takes them off the hook in terms of being a straight partisan issue, Jim. But of course, revelations and disclosures that the Republican House leadership among them probably has accounted for 1,000 checks of the total listed already, probably contributed to that already. But I still think that all incumbents are going to carry a burden going into the fall. There is a perception among the American people, and this wouldn't have been as large an issue if that perception hadn't been there, that 3 out of 4 Americans believe legislators do not understand their concerns, and that this is one more example of a remoteness, that not playing by the same rules, of having special preferences and special privileges that the ordinary citizens don't have.
You agree with that, David?
Not absolutely. I don't agree that it takes the Democrats off the hook. I do think it blunts some of the Republican attacks. It makes it a little harder, but I don't think it changes the fundamentals. First fundamental is that this was an example of the bank continues to be a symbol of arrogance and entrenched power, and in this case, the Democrats happen to be the people in power and running it. I think the vast majority of people in the House were victims of this system of a mismanaged bank, but there were people who were gross offenders. And we do know that 4 out of 5 of those apparently are Democrats. So that I think that it still weighs heavily on the Democrats. The other thing, though, Jim, is that just the clips we saw tonight with Elizabeth and Kwame, they showed how angry people are around the country. It's a volatile political situation. We don't yet have at this hour the results from the various congressional races in Illinois, but we do know in a Senate race out in Illinois that Senator Alan Dixon, longtime durable figure in the Democratic Party, expected to win by a large majority.
You know, the polls showed him way up there.
He was way up there, and he's now apparently in a very close race tonight. Now, that's not a reflection of the bank, because there was no Senate bank, of course. It is a reflection of how unhappy a lot of voters are with Washington.
Yeah, the latest, here again, this is a long way from being definitive, but with some early returns and also some exit polls mixed up, it shows that the race is too close to call among him and Carol Moseley Brown and Albert Hofeld. What do you think about that, Mark? I mean, Alan Dixon, even if he ends up winning tonight, it's going to be very close.
Well, you're absolutely right. Alan Dixon was the undefeated champion of Illinois politics, and may very well be after tonight as well, but this has been the scare of his life. He started at the age of 26 and winning elections ever since. Al the Pal, as he's known affectionately throughout the state, voters of both parties. I think in this primary, Carol Moseley Braun is the Recorder of Deeds in Cook County and the highest-ranking elected black official, and I think that in part the Anita Hill vote in the Senate confirmation of Clarence Thomas last fall, where Alan Dixon, broke with the Senate leadership and voted to confirm Clarence Thomas, may very well turn out to have hurt him in this primary. Let me just add one thing, Jim, and that is that I don't know what I'd never denigrate David's sources. They are terrific sources, but 4 out of 5, I don't know. You're talking about the original list that was released, or you're talking about the overall 355?
I'm talking about the worst offenders list.
Oh, the worst offenders list, of course, which was
heavily Democratic.
Which was leaked last weekend.
23
right?
Democrats and 2 Republicans.
That's right. That's right. No, okay. I because of the 355, you're certainly not suggesting. I think all
You wanted,
the
to make
cabinet,
you wanted to make the point it was 6 out of 7 instead of 3 out of 4.
No, I want to make the point that of all the cabinet officers who have revealed it, they've all been Republicans, David.
How about that, David? Do you believe that the voters around the country are going to be able to make the distinction between what those 24 on there, 25 on the worst abusers list did, and what, say, Dick Cheney and others did?
Well, I think that Dick Cheney is a large group of people, Democrat and Republican, who in fact are well known back in their districts as being honest people, as hardworking people, and they bounced a few checks. I don't think that will be held against them. I think by the fall it will disappear, or at least dissipate as an issue. But for the worst offenders, there's a pattern of abuse here which is very, very hard to explain. And beyond that, of course, we now have a preliminary investigation underway by the prosecutor, U.S. Attorney's Office here in Washington. And if it shows a pattern of personal enrichment as well, then I think those people are gone. But I think those 24, 25 are going to have some very difficult problems in their districts.
I was intrigued, Mark, as I'm sure you were too, by one of the women in Elizabeth Brackett's piece from Illinois who said, Congress should be held to a higher standard than the rest of us. That's an interesting point of view.
It certainly is, and I think it's one that is absolutely legitimate and widely held by Americans. And I think it does account in part these disappointments each time for a greater sense of alienation from our elected office holders, whether it's disclosures about the way we finance our campaigns, or the influence and importance of money in our politics. All of these contribute to a sense that they aren't our elected leaders in people that we should look up to and historically have wanted to look up to.
It's just a general mood of disappointment, is there not?
Yeah, the line that stuck with me out of those two pieces, Jim, was a woman, I think it was in Michigan, Ohio.
Said, Cleveland. Yep.
Yes, right. And said that nothing amazes me anymore, but I'm still disappointed. Yeah. And I think that captured the mood of a lot of voters.
Yeah. Okay. We'll leave it there, gentlemen, and we'll see you here tomorrow night and talk in more detail about all of this. Thank you very much.
Still ahead on the NewsHour tonight, Charlene Hunter-Gault looks at the conflicted histories of Armenia and Azerbaijan. But first, this is Pledge Week on public television. We're taking a short break now so that your public television station can ask for your support. That support helps keep programs like this on the air.
Good evening, everyone. There are very few programs that I really depend on. Expect honest, meticulous coverage from the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour, because that's one of those programs. I'm Jack McGowan, Executive Director of SOLVE, Stop Oregon Litter and Vandalism, and I'm here tonight to support programs like the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour and other OPB programs. Jeff?
Hi, I'm Jeff Douglas. I'm volunteering my time tonight to support public broadcasting. Throughout the evening, other volunteers like myself will be answering phones and helping staff our pledge drive. For your convenience, we have a toll-free number for pledges coming from anywhere in our viewing area. It's a 1-800 number, 245-2346. Or if you're calling from right here in Portland, the number is 245-2345. If you're interested in knowing how the media is getting those ratings, selling ads, keeping you in the dark about important information, you can get the latest scoop on what's called attack journalism and how it's changed the political landscape of America and what we're doing about it. Larry Sabato's Feeding Frenzy bears the whys and wherefores of this latest trend. You can get this book with your $150 pledge tonight. It's an eye-opener. And there's another important benefit that you can get.
One of the best things about being a member of OPB is Oregon Focus, the members magazine. It's a monthly treasury of information about your favorite radio and TV stations. With Oregon Focus at your fingertips, you'll never again be left out of conversations about that great show on OPB last night. Oregon Focus, another benefit of membership in OPB.
Hi, I'm Jeff Gardel-Labeni of Oregon Public Broadcasting's documentary unit. Now, when you join OPB, you'll be joining the OPB community of supporters, people who care about public television. The S in PBS stands for service, not system, and service for the public good is the key word.
You know, the numbers are simple that you need to call. If you're calling from the Portland area, the number is 245-2345. From anywhere else in our viewing area, all of Oregon, including southern Washington too, you can call toll-free, 1-800-245-2346. There are many different ways to pay when you make a pledge. For example, you can take advantage of OPB's monthly installment plan. Each month, we'll transfer the amount you authorize from your checking account to the OPB Foundation. We'll keep track of your contribution. You don't have to think about it. For a $60 contribution, you can receive a handsome OPB mug with its unique hand-etched design. Or a $100 contribution will get you 2 mugs.
And they won't be Jeff's mug and my mug either. Viewer support is what makes public television public. You contribute because the survival of OPB matters to you. You can support what matters to you with a pledge. It's so easy to make that pledge with your credit card. You can even pay in monthly installments. Just ask your phone volunteer from the Nature Conservancy for all the details when you call and make your pledge. We take MasterCard, Discover, Visa, and American Express.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Bridges. Maybe you've noticed. A lot of public television shows are starting to pop up on the commercial stations. Shows like, National Geographic, Brideshead Revisited, Smithsonian World. So I can't tell you that you won't find these kinds of programs on any other station. But I can tell you that you'll find them here first, uncut and uninterrupted by commercials. And what's more, if it weren't for your pledges, you probably wouldn't find them at all. So call now and help public television get more good programs off to a good start.
Thank you, Lloyd. Each year, more and more people realize that OPB really does have something different to offer, and that the programs are truly getting better all the time. Your support in large part is what makes this possible. The best insurance you can buy for the continuation of programs that are important to you and important to your family is to support them with your dollars. You can make that happen by picking up your phone. It's real easy to do. The number to call in Portland, 245-2345, right there on your screen. From anywhere else in our viewing area, that's all of Oregon and southern Washington, call us toll-free, 1-800-245-2346.
And when you pledge to OPB, consider using your Visa, MasterCard, American Express, or your Discover card. We can process your pledge quicker if you use a credit card, and it saves us from having to send you a bill every month. Once again, we're offering the special OPB hand-etched mug as a reminder of your commitment to Oregon Public Broadcasting, and it's yours with a contribution of just $60. Or at the $100 level, we'll send you 2 mugs.
Now, you know the numbers by now. Come on, give us a call. In Portland, call 245-2345. From anywhere in Oregon and southern Washington, wherever you're watching, we'll pick up the tab. Call toll-free, 1-800-245-2346. But you must make the call. We have the volunteers standing by right now from the Nature Conservancy. They're giving up a St. Patrick's night. You help out. Make that commitment right now. Now, in just a few moments, we'll resume the MacNeil-Lehrer NewsHour, and then we urge you to stay tuned at 8 o'clock for an awe-inspiring program about a trip around the Earth from the reaches of space, where else but Nova, and where else but here on OPB. This is going to be an experience you'll never forget. In the meantime, if you've been meaning to support OPB, if you've been procrastinating, now is the perfect opportunity to do just that. Our phone volunteers are waiting for your call, and you'll make possible the kind of programs you want to see in the future. Each and every pledge dollar plays a key role in helping OPB plan and purchase future programs we air. We can't do it without you, but we can do it with you. With your support, OPB can bring you the best of public television and more. And we'd like to take this time to say thank you for sharing with us tonight. We wouldn't be here without your help. But right now, let's get back to the NewsHour. If you're meaning to call right now. The numbers are on your screen, and our volunteers will be here even after the MacNeil-Lehrer NewsHour continues. Thanks very much.
If you'd prefer to mail us your contribution, here's the address. Oregon Public Broadcasting Foundation, Post Office Box 4373, Portland 97208. However, if you'd like to call in your contribution, our phone volunteers will be glad to take your pledge. In Portland, 245-2345. Elsewhere in our viewing area, 1-800-245-2346.
Next time on Nova, the Earth from space, an extraordinary spectacle seen by only a handful of people. Until now, William Shatner will be your guide on a fantastic journey. You will blast 180 miles up into orbit and circle the Earth in just 20 minutes. And you will take a unique look back at our own very special planet. Experience an astronaut's view of Earth next time on Nova.
It's Where You Belong, tonight at 8.
Finally tonight, another in our series of reports profiling the republics that used to make up the Soviet Union. Tonight we turn to Armenia and Azerbaijan. They are presently fighting an undeclared war with one another for possession of the disputed enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh. But as Charlene Hunter-Galt reports, today's conflict has ancient roots.
To the Russians, they are the Transcaucasian republics, literally across the Caucasian Mountains. Tucked into the southwestern corner of the former Soviet Union, Armenia and Azerbaijan have long served as both a buffer zone and battleground between the empires of East and West. Today, these neighbors waged an undeclared war, fighting over borders created by their old communist bosses. But the enmity predates the Soviet era by centuries. When the Red Army rolled into the Caucasus, it found these towers of blood revenge, relics of medieval feuds.
Memory is the center of the way we create our own histories. And history is, in a sense, the story we tell ourselves about who we want to be.
Ronald Sunni is a historian of Armenian descent.
Sadly, those myths, those definitions of who an Azerbaijani is, or who an Armenian is, contain within them an idea of the other, of the enemy, of people who did violence to their forefathers. And it's very hard to eliminate those memories.
Armenia was the smallest of the 15 Soviet republics, but in the 1st century BC, it stretched from the Mediterranean to the Black and Caspian Seas. In the western highlands, where Turks now till the soil, rises the symbol of the Armenian nation, Mount Ararat, the biblical resting place of Noah's Ark.
And so Armenians talk about being the original descendants of Noah. Indeed, I can tell you a story my grandmother told, if you'd like. She told me that before the Tower of Babel, the original language of all the people in the world was Armenian. This was an uneducated woman, but this is the kind of pride she had in her nation. And she always insisted that I learn Armenian. Indeed, she said, Armenian is the language that's spoken in heaven.
In the year 314, Armenia became the first state to adopt Christianity. Armenians invented an alphabet with which to translate the Bible, making beautifully illuminated manuscripts. Over the following centuries, as the nation was invaded by waves of Arabs, Persians, Turks, and Mongols, the Armenian Apostolic Church buttressed national identity.
Armenians lived in a sea of Muslims. And Christianity, in many ways, was the center of the Armenian culture and civilization through most of its history. The Armenian church was the preserver of the Armenian tradition. That's the place where the manuscripts were written, where the histories were told and retold.
This church in Southfield, Michigan, serves a similar purpose for suburban Detroit's large Armenian American community. St. John's architecture is based on two churches near the Armenian capital of Yerevan, which date back to the 5th century. Inside, the congregation is building a museum for its large collection of art and artifacts, objects spanning nearly 3,000 years of Armenian history.
Milan Kundera once said that a small nation can disappear and knows it. Building a museum like this is an effort to make sure Armenians never disappear.
For Armenians, a very real threat. They are among the most persecuted people in history. Their greatest enemies have been the Ottoman Turks, who conquered Armenia in the 16th century and regarded their subjects with unease.
On the one hand, Armenians were an industrious people. They were the chiefs of the Ottoman Mint. They were the chief architect of the Sultan. They were present in the industrial communities in Istanbul and elsewhere. But on the other hand, they were this inferior non-Muslim people who seemed to be getting ahead too much, who seemed to be reversing the traditional hierarchy of Muslim on top and infidel on the bottom.
The Russian Empire expanded in the 19th century and took control of eastern Armenia, setting the stage for what many call the defining event of modern Armenian consciousness.
In 1915, when Turkey was at war with Russia, Armenians were caught between the two countries in which Armenians lived. And the Turks decided to deport Armenians from that front area and to solve the Armenian problem once and for all by essentially massacring them.
To this day, Turkey insists the deaths were the collateral damage of warfare, but to the Armenians, it was genocide. It's estimated that anywhere from 600,000 to 1.5 million Armenians were killed. Amazingly, in 1918, the remaining Armenians defeated the Turkish army and set up an independent state covering most of historic Armenia. But in 1920, Turkey and Russia invaded again. The Soviets took over eastern Armenia and made it a republic. Its neighbor to the east was the Republic of Azerbaijan, a relatively young nation by Armenian standards. It had been formed only 2 years earlier, during the chaos following World War I and the Russian Revolution. For millennia, control of Azerbaijan had seesawed between Iranians and Turks. Azerbaijan's culture is a blend of both. The language is a Turkic dialect. The religion, the Shiite variety of Islam prevalent in Iran. Azeri social customs and foods are also similar to Iran's.
The culture with the capital C, at least up until about 19th century, was Persian. Obviously, there were the Turkic influences, of course, was there. From 19th century, the Ottoman influence also became stronger, and then, of course, the Russian cultural influence.
Shireen Hunter, a political scientist, was born in the Iranian province of Azerbaijan, across the Aras River from Soviet Azerbaijan. The two Azerbaijans have been divided since the early 19th century, when Iran lost a war with Tsarist Russia. Russia had been fighting for access to warm water ports. In the bargain, it also won the soon-to-be-discovered oil wealth of the city of Baku.
Baku itself, which its original name is Bad Kube, literally meaning a city bitten by the wind, or the windy city. It's the Chicago of the Caspian Sea. It was actually a small city. It wasn't of much consequence until the discovery of oil.
Baku is the center of one of the most important oil fields of the world. Some of the oil pools stretch way out under the Caspian Sea. And in order to get the oil out, they have had to drill wells down through the water.
Baku was a turn-of-the-century boom town, attracting many Russians as well as Armenians, who were better educated than the Azerbaijanis and got the better jobs. Resentments took root.
Azerbaijanis, in their rhetoric, very much have a sense that they are the oppressed people of the region, that they have been denied their full expression, that they are not favored by they were never favored by the Russian or the Soviet regime, and that Armenians were always given privilege.
Initially, I think that when the Russians became dominant in that region, obviously they felt that they had more in common with other Christian people in that part, whether it was Georgians or Armenians or others. And as a result, some of them gained much more important positions, for example, in government and so on, and they may have also acquired greater wealth, and this might have contributed to the resentment or some kind of communal strife.
The Russians occasionally exploited these tensions, inciting Armenians and Azerbaijanis to slaughter one another. Tens of thousands died in the pogroms of 1905 and 1918, with Armenians getting the worst of it. By the time the Red Army invaded in 1920, Armenia and Azerbaijan were too exhausted from fighting each other to resist.
The conflict with the Azerbaijanis is a layered problem. First of all, Armenians see Azerbaijanis as Turks. They indeed are a Turkic people. They speak a Turkic language. They themselves see affinities with the Ottoman and post-Ottoman Turks. And so for Armenians, these are cousins of their greatest enemy.
And then there's the territorial problem.
Right. That a small part of what was historic Armenia, called Karabakh, or in Armenian Artsakh, ended up, both in the Tsarist period and the Soviet period, in what is now Azerbaijan.
Nagorno, or mountainous, Karabakh is the easternmost area of historic Armenia. Both Armenians and Azerbaijanis have lived there, but Armenians have been in the majority since the mid-1800s. When the Soviets carved out the republics, they shifted Armenia's borders to exclude Karabakh. And for nearly 70 years, Soviet power stifled disputes. But with Glasnost in the mid-80s, the Armenians organized a movement to reclaim the territory. Azerbaijanis countered with their own nationalistic demonstrations to retain Karabakh.
It has come somehow to symbolize their quest for nationhood, for cultural and national independence and political identity.
The region's pre-Soviet history had resumed, with Azerbaijan struggling to become a nation and Armenia to remain one. Violence broke out in 1988.
They ripped my clothes and started wildly beating me with anything they could lay their hands on. They threatened to cut off my head. And right next to me, they went at my husband, attacked him with an axe, and burned his body.
When I went to get my son's body, there was a militiaman named Makukjan who asked me, "Why are you crying? It's not enough for you? We should have destroyed all your kind." Like this.
More than 1,000 people have died so far fighting over Karabakh, and the violence has spread throughout the two republics, creating hundreds of thousands of refugees on both sides. Even the earthquake that killed 25,000 Armenians failed to bring a truce, as Armenians claimed the Azerbaijanis blockaded relief supplies. Despite calls for a ceasefire, the death toll continues to mount in a struggle fueled by age-old ethnic hatred and newfound nationalist resolve.
Again, the major stories of this Tuesday. Bill Clinton and President Bush won the presidential primaries in Illinois and Michigan. Here are the latest results. In Illinois, Clinton 46 to Paul Tsongas's 30, Jerry Brown 16%. That's with 18% of the vote counted. In Michigan, among the Democrats, Clinton 45, Jerry Brown a strong 30%, Paul Tsongas 19, that's with 33% of the vote counted. On the Republican side in Michigan, President Bush 67% to Pat Buchanan's 26%, that's with a third of the vote counted. And in Illinois, President with 77% to Buchanan's 21%, that's with 19% of the vote counted. Also today, 3 members of the Bush cabinet admitted they bounced checks at the House Bank when they served in Congress. Defense Secretary Dick Cheney said he wrote 21, Agriculture Secretary Edward Madigan 49, Labor Secretary Lynn Martin 16. And that's our news hour for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow night with full analysis of the primary results, among other things. I'm Jim Lehrer. Thank you and good night.
Funding for the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour has been provided by PepsiCo. Part of helping the world live and communicate better is keeping it well informed. That's why funding for the NewsHour is also provided by AT&T and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
What is life like aboard a space shuttle? Don't miss an astronaut's view of Earth on Nova next at 8, here on the television stations of OPB. It's where you belong.
Video cassettes of the MacNeil Lehrer NewsHour are available from PBS Video. Call 1-800-328-PBS-1. This is PBS.
Good evening. Since the 1970s, Robert MacNeil and Jim Lehrer have been bringing the news of the nation and the world to public TV viewers every weekday, and it's quite a record. And part of that record has been a reputation for solid news analysis, something increasingly rare in the world of spin doctors and sound bites. Now keep in mind that everything the NewsHour does, it does with help from public television viewers like you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jack McGowan, and your membership pledge to Oregon Public Broadcasting helps buy rights to the NewsHour and indirectly helps pay for its production. When you join OPB, it's not just another membership in another organization. It's active support for something you value and enjoy. So with that in mind, give us a call right now. Pick up the phone. The call is free. The numbers are on your screen. If you're calling anywhere outside of Portland, it's 1-800-245-2346, or in Portland, 245-2345. If you call us with a pledge of $150, we'll say thank you by sending you a book. It's called Feeding Frenzy, and it's a timely look at the relationship between journalism and privacy where public figures are concerned. It's fascinating